Looking through different videos nowadays of the current situation in Europe when it comes to religion, politics, all sorts of internal struggles, immigrants, and the such. See, I've observed a new concept which apparently has been far older than the initial sources would state. The concept was called law of apostasy, and it feels like there is something highly representative of this in the Muslim world. I am not too knowledgeable about what this concept means, but it instantly resonated to me as a great illusion. But when people exist in a society for way too long, it is hard for them to distinguish something, even an illusion, an easy illusion, from reality because when everyone behaves or is forced to behave in a similar way, it's going to be hard for you to distinguish an illusion from reality because everyone functioning the same way from the young age as a child, you will be programmed, let's say, to follow the same ideas that the adults are following. So I said, when you create a certain system, if you create a system based on a certain level of sensitivity towards life, a certain level of understanding towards your society, your people, and their needs, I don't think you need to force them into accepting new values or accepting something. Because when you force something and you also reinforce it by law, that in a way is a form of authoritarianism. Now, this shouldn't be confused with the idea of law. In terms of a society is a structure that, well, belongs to the idea of stability. The element of stability, which, well, in my cosmogony, is the opposite of the element of chaos, right? Chaos is represented by entropy, or what humans call a natural decline of things, or a tendency for things to decline. Well, I wouldn't call it a natural tendency of things to decline. I call it a natural tendency of stability to dwindle. Because everything that you create, if it is not fulfilled, it will want to come back to life. All your ideas that you have in your mind, if they don't become anything palpable, any idea that you finalize, well, they're just gonna simply dwindle. They will simply dissipate slowly and surely. The problem is, you will identify these with some kind of children of yours or a part of yours, and you're gonna obsessively give energy to all sorts of such ideas. Then you have a big problem because when you reinvest energy into those things, they become like vortices of energy. So the problem is they will require of you more and more energy. So you will feel inevitably that you are bound to support those ideas to exist. This is, in a way, a pillar of fanaticism. If something disappears, well, your life is not going to be the same without it. So you're going to fight horrendously a lot for it. You're going to be capable of doing all sorts of horrible things. Yes? This is the same premise that society is using with its ads when it is promoting its services or its products, whatever they be. The simple point is this: they will promote not the products necessarily, but how bad your life can be without those products or services, right? This is the very simple point. Your life will be worthless or so much harder without those products, even if you don't need them, realistically speaking. In a society, see, the problem that a society has is the idea of morals. See, moral is something, a set of unwritten laws that become custom the more you put them into use. And morals differ because morals are highly different from what I may call, or even other people call, spiritual morals, right? Because not killing, for example, is a spiritual moral, right? You're not going to feel good enough. You're not going to feel good at all if you kill or torment others. But with sufficient practice by society, this can actually become a moral, especially if bullied by another group of people, by another party of people, by another nation of people. And that's how you have wars. And societies end up having the ideology that the enemy has to be exterminated. this is even easier to integrate as a moral because it is the first premise of the mind. When someone pisses you off, if you're sensitive enough, what is the first impulse that your mind has? It is to kill it. When you have pains in your body, what is the first impulse of the mind? To kill the pain. Yes? Or to kill the source of the pain. Hence why we have created pills. Even if pills may not necessarily kill the pain, well, they will dumb you down and they will, let's say, neuter your nervous system for a while, and well, you'll feel as if the problem is gone. Most likely the body will have handled the problem even without the pill, but well, at least it's no longer hurting. In case of severe headaches, well, that is a good point. When it comes to societies, see, the problem with societies is that everyone has created their own morals, right? In feudal Japan, like if you disobeyed the system, anyone could simply have killed you, no one would have given a damn about you. The Norse society in its ancient times, they had customs, right, in which they would sacrifice prisoners of war, right? It would still mean killing others, but it was part of their culture, it was part of their behavior, so therefore their societal morals. Although it's a pleonasm, yes, I state it so specifically. If you look at many other countries, they all had different ways, shapes, or form. Because of separation and, well, the level of awareness of people being kept at a very, like, all-time low, it is easy to start thinking in terms of separation. So therefore, separation is always going to be the prelude to fanaticism. Because, well, separation already means you're an enemy of the others. Everyone else who doesn't think like you, well, they are the bad ones, right? So you should stay aside from them. Fanaticism just takes it top notch, right? Takes it a few steps forward and says, let's kill the others because they're not like us, they don't think like us before they kill us, right? It has always an idea of idiocy and an idea of stagnation because you become obsessed with serving an idea, not the idea itself, serving the idea. When you deal with fanatics, fanatics will always wish to impose. But even if they impose, they're not going to be fulfilled, right? Because fanaticism means everything that is not like me has to be exterminated, right? So even if I integrate new things, those new elements, people, whatever they are, sooner or later they have to be exterminated because ultimately they're still not part of you. You hate everyone, equally or not, because they are not part of you. Yes? If you integrate them, you can't be on equal terms with them. Yes? Because ultimately, the simple point is this: when you can't deal with people being different than you, in a way, you're a fanatic. And you're never gonna be willing to be on the same stage, on the same level, or even below the others, right? This is also part of Zionism in a way. Because Zionism ultimately it is nothing else but a form of fanaticism. Fanaticism again means you automatically entitle yourself as above everyone else, right? It doesn't matter whether it is political or it is religious or any other form. This is how it goes. Now, when it comes to moving even further, you will organize events through which you will say that some of the newcomers in your system have betrayed one way or another. You'll just frame them and you'll make a show out of it, and some of those will have to be killed because, well, they're already not part of yours. Fanaticism can't accept peace because the main aspect, the main frame of fanaticism is war, right? Fanaticism is not born out of peace and does not seek peace. It is all about seeking more and more separation, right? The biggest problem with fanaticism is you treat everyone different. Let's say you kill all the others who are not similar to you. Now the biggest problem is you need to create a fracture because everyone is more or less similar to you. Now you have no more purpose, right? So you have to create a fracture. Someone pisses you off, it may be your father, your mother. Well, in a way, they kind of look similar to what you don't like, right? So this is a big problem because, in a way, fanaticism is a moral, but at the same time is not a moral. It's kind of hard for me to put it into words because I spent some time studying it, how it functions on my inner side, on my inner strengths or sanctums, whatever you want to call it. But ultimately, the biggest problem of fanaticism is that it will always seek to impose. When you want to impose, the biggest problem is imposing means taking away rights, right? If you're creating a system that is pleasant, I don't think people need to be forced into following it because they will follow it. Why does this sick society impose all sorts of ideas, right? But in a very perverted way, in a very cutesy way, because it doesn't want you to realize that you're a slave that is now dependent on the system far more than it used to be back in the time. So, it wants you to keep enjoying your ignorance and your comfort zone, which ultimately is your death. Because comfort means stagnation. Stagnation is the cousin of death. If you're a pleasant person, you will see many people, even toxic ones, will naturally go towards you, right? People who are not toxic, they will stray from toxic conversations and they will come to you, right? You don't need to impose your presence. You don't need to be in any way, shape, or form bossy or a dick or anything. You just be, and people will gravitate to you. I've seen this in my existence, and many people have told me that I have somewhat of a soothing presence. Well, I don't know. It is their experience, not mine, because ultimately, when you look at yourself, you kind of end up being your greatest blind spot. Because everything regarding you and your impact on others is what people will basically feel about you, right? You can't feel about yourself necessarily what other people feel about you. You may be all pleasant in your life, but if people are not pleasant, they're gonna tell you that you suck, right? So creating a system that supports others, well, not necessarily fully, because you can't fully support a big mass of people. The point is, when you grant others, through your actions, through your deeds, palpable results that improve their lifestyle, if their lifestyle goes beyond a certain threshold and their survival is no longer much of an issue, you have solved the idea of fanaticism. Because ultimately, fanaticism is also based on survival. Don't forget, survival is survival of the self, survival of the physical body, and also survival on a social level. Don't forget that these three are also representatives of each of the three lower chakras in our body, right? But I'm not going to dive into things regarding the chakras because I'm not much of a specialist in those. But ultimately, the very simple point is when you take things into account, imposing things on others means you're already creating a nightmare for others, an authoritarian regime. See, why would you even consider yourself willing to impose something on others? See, everyone is an equal part of creation. Everyone is an idea of the creator, right? When you want to be imposing on others of anything you think is suitable or better for them, well, the simple point is like you're a slave of an idea, right? You're making a lot of noise. You're no longer an idea of creation, you're a constipated idea of creation. Now, if we are to think a bit about this logically, we'll probably rub religious people the wrong way. But think a bit about this. Do you think the creator really wants you? Yes, you will find a lot of these fake gurus telling you that God loves you and such, but God loving you doesn't mean that they will do something necessarily or specifically for you. God's love doesn't mean that they will serve you. Yes, it doesn't mean that God will serve you. There are forces in this universe that creation has created. These forces were designed and they exist beyond you. Whether you get capable of enlisting these forces into not fighting for you but supporting you, well, that is your point. It is not God's idea to do that. You think about God as someone, God or creation, whatever you want to call it, has created all of these things. Everything that lives in this world is nothing else than a simple idea. If you want to be a constipated idea, well, it is your choice. But I don't think creation will be interested in a constipated idea, right? Because even you're not going to enjoy someone who's noisy, who's lousy, who's miserable all the time. right? Because they're also vampiric, they're also gonna weaken you, they're also gonna tire you. Yes? So you're gonna want someone who is lighter than you. Creation is lighter than you because it has created all the possibilities. You're just a minor possibility of it. So why would you think that out of all the possibilities you'd be more entitled in the face of creation? Yes? It's like when you live in an empire, right? Now if the emperor goes or the empress goes on an authoritarian path, well, some of the people in the empire may be wiser, some of the people may be richer, some of the people may be poorer. Every one of you is a slave. In an authoritarian empire or an authoritarian regime, everyone is a slave. Yes, it doesn't matter. But somewhere down there in your mind, you suffer from an illusion that you are more entitled towards creation than, well, everyone else. Now, in this society, I don't know why you would want in an authoritarian regime to be entitled and to be appearing as important in the face of the rulers. Because the rulers, as opposed to God, well, they don't have quite everything. The rulers usually are more ignorant than the masses, and, well, ignorant people are stagnant. Stagnant people are always suspicious. If you become important in the eyes of people, well, those people in the rulership, they will be always an oligarchy. They will live by their own rules and as such, they can't accept anyone else. Remember, there were wise voices speaking to you about this sick society. It's all about a little club where they're throwing their own parties and you're not invited. Because ultimately, even in the mainstream media, you will see there are always secret numbers of people that will be allowed. Each group of the mainstream media will have a certain number, a magical number of people which will be allowed. Yes, not the people are not magical. They're needed, they're intended to be slaves. And some will accept 323, some will accept 313, some will accept 300 fix, some will accept more or less, depends on their ideology and whether this serves an importance to them or not. But if it goes beyond that, well, they have to start doing some killing because, well, you know, they can't accept more. That is the problem with all fanatics. They can't accept others for too long inside their system. This whole matrix is about you being part of their matrix, of their prison. And guess what? Your numbers are way too more. So they're gonna thin the population a lot. Whoever ends up in their system, well, they're not gonna be having an interesting life. See, the biggest problem in Europe is with the immigrants because they're not seeing that they are being used, right? They're not, even the fanatic Muslims, they're not invited in Europe to simply impose their religion. Let's say those simply claim the entirety of Europe and the entirety of Europe will be Muslim. Well, I can say sucks to be them because all the people they have killed, now they are living peacefully and they have left this world. Now those who are left, well, they are left to simply reap the benefits. And the benefits, well, aligning yourself with a sick society, even fighting for one, well, that's definitely far away from being a sane human. So if we are to go further and further, well, that means this video will become way too lengthy. The simple point is, a law of apostasy sounds in a way primitive by design, because if you need to impose something on someone, it means that you have to impose penalties on them if they disobey. Now, this can be misinterpreted as law, but I wouldn't be surprised if the punishment would be even capital punishment. The biggest problem with capital punishment is someday later you may get proof that that person was not guilty. What are you gonna do without? Right? You can't do anything because the person is already dead. So apostasy is usually promoted by fanatics because fanatics don't care much about life. Beyond all fanatics, it's just abandonment. And people who are abandoned, well, people who are abandoned will be triggered on the feminine or the wounded masculine side, right? Wounded feminine or wounded masculine. Wounded masculine will be all about stomping everyone into submission. Wounded feminine will be about distorting you, manipulating you, doing all sorts of things, taking you through the whole psychiatry of feelings and broken feelings and shattering you into pieces, caring for you a bit because they're feeling bad, and then they're gonna take you through the whole psychiatry again and again. And neither of these will end. Yes, that is why Catholicism has failed in a way because people lost faith in it. That is why also Islam will dwindle slowly and surely. It is already happening, but people are not seeing it. It is still on the rise because, most of the Islam people are Arabs. Arab people have a great natality. But there will be a moment when the people will quit Islam so much that even their natality won't be enough. Now, Islam will not vanish. From what I have seen in my perceptions, and perhaps I'm going to be called a false prophet again, there will be a big splinter in Islam. Now, it's not going to be a splinter just like Catholicism and Orthodoxy. It's going to be more of a silent one, where some people, influential people, will rise, well, either through fake ideas because they want attention. Many of them will be because they want something better for their future. And they will say, these are the ugly truths about Islam, and these are the new points that we bring, and well, they will teach people about the horrible parts of the past. There will be probably some changes, whatever, but they will also show new things, new changes, and new adaptations to the present. There will be the other splinter, which will keep um, to the current state of their religion. And what I've seen is that the second part will slowly dwindle, not necessarily disappear. None of the religions will necessarily disappear, but I'm telling you, in few generations, you will see a huge decrease in the number of so-called religious people. People will call themselves whatever they will, but simply, slowly and surely, religions and society have showed them that in most cases they're not serving the interest of the people. If you look at the religions, on paper they are all looking good. Well, except Zionism, obviously, but Zionism also looks good for its own followers, right? When you look at Islam, it also looks good for its followers. When you look at Christianity, it feels more like it looks better for everyone. But obviously, like any structure, it is best suited for its own followers, right? And well, if you look in the world, there are two forces in a way that have survived all the odds. You have a set of beliefs, which is called Hinduism, and then you also have Orthodoxy, which is a religion. Both of them paid a huge price because they didn't have too many warriors. They were both ideologies of peace. And Islam, well, Islam simply expanded itself mostly on Orthodox territories. When it came to the Catholic side, which was again fanatic and expansionist in a way, or very defensive because it became expansionist much, much later, well, the simple point was you look at the history and you will see that the Islamic world wasn't too successful against the Catholic part, but it was very successful at breaking everything of the Orthodoxy. Even if you will see that they were highly interested in Orthodoxy in a way, they preserved some of it and this and that, but having your culture preserved isn't much of an importance when you become a slave of a different society. It doesn't matter what that other society serves or believes in. When you're a slave of someone else or a different society, well, kind of sucks to be you. It doesn't matter what you believe in anymore, and it doesn't matter what the others believe in. Because the simple reality is that you're going to be a subservient of others. People will simply move away, slowly and surely. The more aware they become, they will slowly move away from everything that has an excess, right? And we have seen that Catholicism and, well, a part of the Islamic world is highly bent on wounded masculine energy. You see hundreds of thousands of Islamic followers. I'm not sure how many of them are truly Islamic people, but, well, they are paid by the Khazari who rule over Europe to simply cause trouble and pit Christians against Muslims, because when the two religions fight one another, the third one will do its own things behind the shadows, right? And the very simple point is these people impose all of their things. They want even their own laws in Britain, in France, and Germany. And this clearly goes to show the ugly side of fanaticism. Because with fanaticism, you have to understand there is hardly any diplomacy left. Because they are not gonna give up. See, fanaticism is kind of always burst out of wounded masculine energy. When you disregard wounded masculinity, but when you disregard masculinity, it tends to become wounded. And this woundedness will grow more and more. It will hit in the tribalism aspect of masculinity. And when you are um, hurt enough by this idea that you are not worthy, that you are not accepted by our society, that you are not supported by our society, well, inevitably you will become a conqueror. Look at Islam. Islam is not the engine of aggression, right? I'm not knowledgeable of Arabic history, but in their history, in their karmic structure, there has been so much frustration, so much chaos, so much ignorance, and so much pain that the people there simply felt abandoned. They felt they had no more cause. Islamic faith, when it came, obviously it was a new, breath of fresh air. Yes? And being a fresh air, being something new, obviously a lot of people will simply embrace it. And the same thing happened, for example, with the Norse people. Because they weren't conquered by Christianity. Something new came, many of them were simply kind of not bored, but they were kind of disinterested in following the same things. Nothing will live forever. You have to understand this. You are not gonna live forever in this world. Even your religion will dwindle entirely sometime in the future. It can be 50,000 years, 100,000 years. It doesn't matter. Someday it will simply vanquish, right? It will simply vanish. Because sooner or later, if you imagine one thing, if all of us humans are simply wiped out of this planet, there's no more religion. Yes? There's no more version of God that we imagined. There's no more God, there's no more Allah, there's no more anyone else. It is just creation in its way, and that's it. Creation doesn't have a shape, it doesn't have a name, but, well, feel free to give them some because ultimately the mind is obsessed with details. The mind can't process things beyond something which is palpable. You can't imagine something that doesn't have a shape, right? You can imagine something gaseous, but gaseous is still a shape. Yes, it is a certain form of physicality. And the mind cannot simply function outside of that. So when we function into this idea, imposing aspects, see, imposing aspects is always a result of fanaticism, of feeling abandoned, and you must show others that you're worthy. When nobody cares about you, you will become entitled to showing everyone else that you are worthy. You will work towards that, but ultimately it is what you will call vengeance. Most of the people affected by wounded masculine energy, will usually seek a silent vengeance, where they will simply gain the resources needed and then they will strike against their foes, right? This has happened throughout the entirety of history. When this became a societal issue, big groups of people fought other big groups of people. They caused a lot of pain, then the others retaliated, and then hundreds of years later, you had a full-fledged war. And each of the sides found it morally that the destruction and killing of the others was, well, something legal, something normal, right? You look at Christianity, a lot of its knights were called noble if they killed people who were not of the same religion. This is how fanaticism and manipulation function because, well, ultimately, when the Khazari influenced Europe more than 500 years ago, they started using Christianity and, better said, Catholicism against itself and changed its ideologies so that, they, the Khazari, would fulfill their agendas through the help or more like the guidance from the background of the Christians, right? And nowadays, well, even back then, because they were sent away by the Arabs, and, well, when the Khazari had to choose a religion because they wanted a new society, they didn't like Christianity and Islam in the first place. They chose the Mosaic religion. And then they started replacing the Jewish people, and, well, they preserved their ideologies, shaped them a bit, and, well, they have Zionism, right? Which is a form of fanaticism, which ultimately means everyone else has to be exterminated. But the others being far greater in numbers, you have to make sure that they fight one another. Because when two fight, the third one will do their own things in the background. Have you forgotten that when it was all about the war in USA, the North against the South? Did you know that there were two Khazari people, right? Two Rothschilds, I think, that one supported the North with weapons and money and everything they needed, one supported the South with weapons and money. Those people killed one another, they did the genocide that the Khazari needed, they weakened the country enough, and well, guess what? They got even more grasp. And in order to so called finalize the war that they were supporting, well, the very simple funny point was that they created even more impositions and even more laws that were stricter and stricter, right? You've seen the pattern even nowadays in your own life. So hopefully this video raised a bit of awareness. You're appreciated. Take care, enjoy life, and this being said, Ferenc Board signing out.